Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. And this is translated with the name Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, most gracious, most merciful. Thee alone do we worship, and Thee alone do we seek for help. Show us the straight way, the way of those upon whom Thou hast bestowed Thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and who go not astray. Ameen. My name is Omar Haamid Abdur-Rahim. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts on May the 17th, 1953. This is archive 002. My mother and my father, they were married, and my father was in the household up until I was maybe about 4, and then they separated. I'm the oldest of 8 siblings. In about the early 60s, after living in a few places in Roxbury, we moved to a Mission Hill housing project. My mother, as a single female head of household, she was there to deal with all the issues of the house. Myself being the oldest, I found myself having to help her, and I eventually left school when I was in the 10th grade, but actually the last grade that I was actually in marginally participating was the 9th grade. I found myself having issues at home with my mother. My mother was a disciplinarian, while at the same time she was there to try to do the best that she could. And myself, from the age of 10, when I first got introduced to alcohol, I used to hang with individuals, young guys like myself, whose families were alcoholics. And so we would hook school and go to his house, and we would get high, and that led to other introductions to intoxicants such as marijuana, sniffing glue, as well as an assortment of pills. And by the time I was 13 years old, I found myself experimenting with heroin. At the time, I didn't know it was heroin. We used to call it doogie or skag. So I started snorting it, and then me and some associates, we started mainlining. So by the time I was 14 years old, I had been mainlining. And it's interesting because I can remember I loved school. I was an honor roll student up to about the 6th grade. But once I started hanging out, I didn't have real aspirations. I just wanted to do better. When I was in school, I enjoyed good marks. I enjoyed some of the subject matters. But as I went into the street life, any aspirations really sunk into the daily activity of being out there. So aspirations were from day to day, meaning getting high, getting some money, finding a way to get around in that particular setting. I found myself at the age of 18 as a heroin addict, shooting drugs every day. I found myself involved with an individual that I had briefly met, getting involved with an armed robbery. We went into a convenience store, and in the process of this armed robbery, my partner, my associate, he ended up shooting and killing the individual who was one of the employees of the store, which I found out later he was one of the proprietors of the store. And I was finally caught. They tried us under the felony murder rule, which states that in the commission of a felony, all parties involved with the felony are responsible for any deaths that might take place. So as an associate, I was charged with first-degree murder. The district attorney came to me and my co-defendant and said that they would lessen the charge to second-degree murder if we took this plea. The first-degree felony murder charge called for a sentence of life without parole. My co-defendant, after some discussion with his lawyer and looking at the entire situation, he accepted the second-degree plea. The offer of a second-degree murder trial or deal to me, which was a 15-year parole eligibility, just wasn't registering as something I really wanted to do, or I just think my mind was dealing with the fact I hadn't killed anybody. So being 18, 15 years was like as long as I had lived. So I talked to my lawyer. He gave me a scenario that, this is a 50-50. He said maybe 60-40. My co-defendant, he took the deal. He got convicted of second-degree murder. I went to trial, and I got found guilty of first-degree murder. So on May the 17th, 1973, I was given a pillowcase, 2 sheets, and a blanket. I went up to my room or my cell. I put my belongings in there, and I just sat on the bed thinking about what this journey was going to be about. And I was just sitting there. And I asked myself, what is this? Where I was at, what's going on? Because I was running into people, and the behavior was so off kilter for me that it just made me wonder what was going on. People were getting high. People were just moving around like they were still in the street. And I'm dealing with the fact that I just got a life sentence and I hadn't killed anybody. That was my mindset. And as I began to roll back my tape relative to my activity and the things I was doing that led up to me coming to prison, it was a very emotional experience. I was very ashamed of myself. And I cried because I felt bad about the reality that was flowing in on me, that I had really kind of lost my mind out in the street. And I realized that so had many others that I ran with in the street. So I had to come to a conclusion. I said to myself, you're going to have to fix this. If you don't fix this, you're not going to be able to make it through this prison. And as I moved around the institution, I went to different programs. I kind of moved around different settings and different circles, trying to see what was there that I could tie into, that I thought could help me work on myself and do some different things. The thing that impressed me most was a program that was in the institutions, or a group that was in the institutions at that time, called the Nation of Islam. No drinking, no getting high, see the value of yourself, see your humanity, and the aspect of worshiping God was appealing in that it was morally constituted. I found myself being very studious, so I wasn't using drugs anymore. I wasn't getting high. I wasn't doing the same. I wasn't hanging out with the dudes that I used to hang out with. I was going to school. I was working for my GED. And as a matter of inside the group's hierarchy, there were different positions of status that you had that you could move up, so to speak. So I became squad leader. I became lieutenant. I became an assistant minister as time went on. One of the things that was brought to my attention is that due to a legislative act called Chapter 777, the Prison Reform Act, furloughs were introduced into the system that had never been before. So someone had came to me and said, "Oh, Reese, why don't you put in for a furlough?" And I said, "I got a first-degree life sentence. That I'm not going to be able to get no furlough." He said, "No, you can." So I went to get it confirmed by my case manager. He said, "Yes, you're eligible for furlough." Furlough was that you would be able to leave the institution, go into the community for a limited amount of time, and then return to the institution. When I was on furloughs, I could go out to the community, and I interacted with the community. I became a member of a mosque, Masjid al-Quran, and I had lectured at the masjid a few times, more than a few times as a matter of fact, and became a part of the community, being involved in some of their activities. I also met my wife at Masjid al-Quran and was married at Masjid al-Quran. I have a son. My son is 38 years, going on 38 years old. My wife has been with me for almost 40 years. So I'm feeling very blessed. But that process had not been there, I would have not had those opportunities. Now, many people might see this as being too liberal, but really it was a matter of allowing a human being, allowing a person to see their own human value, their own human worth, because for the first time I was feeling significant in the sense that there was more to me than just being a kid from the project who got caught up in drugs, caught up in crime. But now I saw another part of me that was able to not be involved with drugs, not be involved with crime, and actually being involved in social issues in the community. So what the furloughs allowed me to do was be able to integrate myself in the community and feel a sense of worth and value. I got my GED. I became a drug counselor. I became a tutorer. I also became what was known as the co-camp chairman of the institution. I was paying attention to was what was called the commutation process. Commutation process was that you could petition the parole board, which becomes the governor's advisory board. So that meant that guys doing life sentences, they had an opportunity to show that they had made enough progress that they could be considered for commutation. I went before the commutation board in 1986. And in 1987, by unanimous vote, they voted for me to be considered. The governor, Michael Dukakis, decided he was going to run for president. He ended up coming out of the Democratic Convention as the nominee. And so from there, the whole process of commutation was delayed. It was no longer in process. As a result of Dukakis's running and as a result of an individual here in Massachusetts who was on a furlough, and he did not return to the institution. His name was Willie Horton. They decided that they would take this issue because when Horton went to another state, he committed a crime of house evasion, rape. So they took that scenario and they brought it to the national floor in the campaign to say that Dukakis was an ultra-liberal and that he allowed murderers to go out on furloughs. So it really revolutionized the whole criminal justice system to the point where in Massachusetts, the furlough program was not only halted, but it was pretty much abolished. Myself and about 63 other men were rounded up the same evening, early morning actually, after 12 o'clock, which made it 1988, and were brought to a medium security prison to be reclassified. And myself and just one other individual were allowed to go back out into the minimum security institution. And it wasn't until 1993 that a new governor decided that he would sign my recommendation from the advisory board, and that was Governor William F. Weld. At my commutation hearing, I was asked about the 5 principles of Islam. And I was also asked, what did I think about the Ayatollah Khomeini putting a hit out on Salman Rushdie? And then I was even asked the question, why do you think God made you? So relative to a commutation hearing, which was supposed to deal with my progress through the system, the programs I had that I had been a part of, the furlough program, which I had participated for 8.5 years, going in and out of institutions over 115 times without any major issues. That didn't seem to be the issue at hand. There were comments such as, I don't know if he's really rehabilitated. Life means life. And the council, they voted 5-3 to deny my commutation. I put in another petition in 1994. The board accepted my petition and again gave me a unanimous 7-0 recommendation for the governor to commute my sentence. Governor Weld, he wouldn't sign it. 2 more governors came in and they wouldn't sign it. Mitt Romney comes into office and he summarily denied all petitions, including mine, for commutation. And so I was no longer a candidate for commutation. So in 2004, I put in another petition. However, that petition was denied by the Board of Pardon, saying I had not submitted anything that met the threshold of a commutation hearing, let alone a vote. I put in for another commutation, and that petition failed just as well. My co-defendant, he was paroled in 2002. That's 2 years before Mitt Romney summarily denied my petition. So he had been out from 2002 to today, which is 2021. So as I'm speaking, someone may wonder, well, how are you out here speaking if you got denied all those times? In prison, you might say figuratively, man, I'm dying to get out of prison. But literally, I had to be dying to get out of prison. I contracted fourth stage prostate cancer, so I had an operation, and it appeared as if most of the cancer had been removed. Then I had a reoccurrence, and that reoccurrence put me in a position of the cancer having metastasized. So at some point in the legislature, they passed a bill. If a person was severely or is severely disabled, or they have a terminal illness where the likelihood is that they would die within 18 months or so, they could petition for a medical release. I was approved 60 days after my petition to be granted medical parole. I was released on March 3rd, 2020. And so I've been out here since then, receiving treatment. And so far, the treatment has allowed me to still be here. And I'm talking to you as a result of 48 years in prison and being allowed to come out of prison because I have an illness that is terminal. In my journey, there would be certain situations that just kind of struck me, and I would write a poem or whatever came to my mind regarding it. So I hope you'll indulge me. I'm not a poet as such, but I've made a humble effort. So I'd just like to share this few with you. This particular one is called Escape the Landscape. He thought Superman could fly. Didn't understand it was just a TV program, a lie. Blue towel around his neck as a cape, determined to defy gravity and escape. It all began in the red brick fortress, the citadel we were bred in. 27-story structures with 28 apartments each, 14 three-story buildings with 12 homes to breach. 604 dwellings with 5 occupants despaired. 3,020 people locked into a 2-block square. Curious, wide-eyed ferret engaged youth playing games of Dare You, including jumping the roof. Concrete, steel, and flesh intermingling, elevators, stairways, cascading, hallways in each building. This was our gymnasium, our pavilion. Take a ride on the elevator straight to the top. Climb on this roof, stand on the ledge of the shaft while the elevator goes down. Lean hard to the wall or you'll fall fast and regret to stop. We laughed and taunted, all out of fun and play. But Marshall didn't quite see it that way. He went to the roof, looked over its edge, walked back slowly to fulfill his pledge. And with a quick dash, he sped. His last words were, up, up, and away.